In the dim stillness of an empty dojo, a lone warrior pauses long enough to hear the echo of his own heartbeat. No footsteps, no challengers, no blades crossing. Only the quiet pulse within his chest is steady, yet trembling with a truth he can't outrun. Fear does not greet him with a roar. It reveals itself the moment the world grows silent enough for him to notice what has been hiding under his breath. In this strange calm, the air feels denser. Shadows stretch longer. Even the dust seems to float more slowly, as if refusing to disturb the tension around him. This is the battlefield. No one sees the one where your greatest enemy waits with infinite patience. You know this place. It appears in the late hours when the noise of others fades, and your own doubts begin their ceremony. Fear grows not in the chaos of war, but in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. It sharpens itself when you finally stop moving. It expands in the stillness you try so hard to avoid, because silence exposes the fragile parts of you that constant activity keeps buried. Musashi once wrote that the enemy you fear most is the one your mind invents. He understood that the world outside cannot wound you as deeply as the stories you whisper to yourself. And in the modern world, those whispers take new forms, messages left on screens, expectations stacked on your shoulders, the subtle suspicion that unseen observers are judging every misstep. Fear today rarely announces itself. It slips in unnoticed, like a cold breath behind your neck. But here lies the truth you've been avoiding. Fear is a whisper, not a storm. And if you wish to destroy it, you must learn to approach it with the same quiet it uses to approach you. Fear does not always leap from the dark with fangs and fire. More often, it walks a single step behind you, close enough that you feel its presence, far enough that you can deny it. You sense it trailing you from room to room, from year to year, from the man you were into the man you pretend to be. It clings to your back with a loyalty you never asked for. And every time you try to outpace it, the shadow grows longer, as if mocking your effort to escape what was always inside you. Musashi wrote, "Perception is strong. Sight is weak." The fear you feel rarely comes from what is directly in front of you. It comes from what your mind believes might be hiding behind the next step. You don't fear the moment, you fear the imagined version of it. That's why no amount of running works. You're sprinting from a phantom built from your own perception. And in the modern world, this phantom has learned new ways to whisper. It hides inside the comparisons you make without meaning to, the silent judgment you project onto others, the digital landscapes where everyone seems to be watching, even when no one is thinking about you at all. Fear grows in these illusions, subtle, shapeless, quiet. It becomes a constant vibration beneath your skin. There comes a moment, though, when you stop pretending you don't feel it. A moment when the running exhausts you more than the fear itself. And in that moment, something shifts. You'll turn around, not with violence, not with rush, but with a tired willingness to finally see what has been following you. And you discover the first truth of silent courage. Naming the shadow weakens it. Denying it gives it power. You dismantle fear not by fleeing from it, but by acknowledging that it has been trying to speak to you all along. Imagine Musashi sitting alone in a dim room, legs folded beneath him, blade resting at his side. The night presses against the paper walls, but his breath remains steady and broken, unwavering. He does not meet fear with noise. He does not summon loud courage. He simply allows stillness to strip fear of its disguise. In that gate, the mind cannot hide behind movement. The heart cannot mask its unrest with distractions. The warrior becomes both the observer and the observed. Fear dies in this silence because there is nothing left for it to feed on. Noise is its nourishment. Distraction is its oxygen. Aggression only confirms its power. But a man who sits with himself, unarmed and unguarded, becomes a mirror too honest for fear to withstand. Self-possession is the blade that cuts deeper than any shout or strike. Today, most men try to drown fear in noise. They bury it under busyness. They conceal it beneath bravado. They swallow it with entertainment or chase it away with constant motion. But these rituals only strengthen fear's grip, because they teach the mind that fear is too overwhelming to face without a shield. And so the man grows louder, while his spirit grows smaller. But there is another way the ancient way, a ritual older than swords and younger than fire. Sit in stillness. Stay long enough for the shaking to surface. Stay longer for it to pass. Sit until the mind exhausts its illusions and the body stops trying to escape itself. This confrontation is quiet, but it is absolute. Fear collapses when you stop participating in its performance, when you refuse to dance with it, when you refuse to amplify it with reaction. The silence becomes your strength. The steadiness becomes your weapon. And somewhere in that motionless realm, fear realizes it has no audience left, no stage, no script, no power. There comes a moment when a warrior stops gripping his sword not because he is weak, but because he finally understands the enemy he feared was never standing across from him. He opens his hand, lets the weapon rest on the ground, feeling the strange weightlessness that follows. The world does not collapse. The threat does not appear. Instead, something inside him loosens, as though a chain he didn't know he carried has quietly snapped. Musashi believed mastery of self outweighed mastery of technique. A man armed with self-command needs few defenses. A man without it can carry 1,000 weapons and still tremble. The empty hand symbolizes a deeper kind of power, the strength that is not borrowed from tools, status, applause, or armor. It is the strength of a man who trusts himself enough to stand exposed. Modern men seek safety in external things. Validation, substances, relationships, roles, achievements. They stack layers around their insecurities, hoping fear won't pierce through. But fear always finds a way to slip between the cracks, because anything external can be stripped away. And once at ease, the man is left with the truth he avoided. The battle was never outside. Fear fades the moment you realize you already possess everything required to face it: the breath, the presence, the awareness, the stillness. No sword can give you what your own discipline hasn't built. No armor can protect a spirit that doubts itself. But the empty hand-to-hand that relies on inner solidity becomes unbreakable. To walk with the empty hand is to walk with an inner completeness that fear cannot infiltrate. It is not about having nothing. It is about needing nothing. And in that quiet independence, you discover the rarest kind of freedom, the ability to stand alone without trembling, unarmed yet undefeatable. Before Musashi stepped onto any battlefield, before he raised a blade or met an opponent's gaze, he performed a ritual older than his victories. He tied his headband slowly, deliberately, as if sealing a pact with himself. In that moment, the real fight had already taken place. Not against the enemy in front of him, but against the hesitation, the doubt, the quiet inner resistance trying to weaken his resolve. By the time he walked forward, fear had already died in silence. Fear is rarely born from what you must do. It is born from what you imagine might happen. Anticipation is the silent architect of dread 1,000 outcomes sketched in the mind, none of which exist anywhere except within your own imagination. And yet, these phantoms defeat men long before any real challenge arrives. They fall before the moment begins, surrendering to fears that were never tested. You know this pattern. You've lived it. The job you didn't pursue, the words you didn't speak, the risks you backed away from, not because you weren't capable, but because fear whispered its story before reality had a chance to show its truth. Every man has lost battles that never happened, silent defeats in the mind that stain his spirit more deeply than any external failure could. Musashi understood the cure: pre-acceptance. To defeat fear, accept every possible outcome before you act. Accept loss, accept victory, accept embarrassment, accept success, accept everything, until no scenario remains that can hold your spirit hostage. When you approach the moment with nothing left to lose, fear has no leverage. It cannot negotiate with a man who has already surrendered to the truth that anything can happen and he will remain himself regardless. The battle is won in the quiet preparation, in the still decision to face whatever comes. By the time action arrives, fear is already hollow, and a man who has defeated fear before the moment begins walks into the world with a calm that no chaos can disturb. Fear often feels like a dragon, towering, ancient, merciless. But when you finally strike it, you discover your blade passes through smoke. The monster was never solid. It only appeared that way because you never dared to approach it closely enough to see its true form. Musashi wrote of the difference between illusion and reality, insisting that most enemies are born from the mind's refusal to look directly at what frightens it. Modern fear operates the same way. You imagine failure with such vivid detail that it becomes a living entity. You picture rejection until it feels like a verdict already passed. You craft narratives about embarrassment, disappointment, judgment stories so detailed they convince you they are inevitable. The mind becomes a playwright, staging tragedies that were never meant to occur. But if you trace fear back to its source, following every thread, every whisper, every tension in your chest, you eventually find nothing. No substance. No core. Just an unexamined belief. A memory. A misinterpretation. A ghost stitched from old wounds and future fantasies. This is the quiet death of illusion. The moment when you realize the enemy you've been battling has no body to harm you with. There's a strange laugh that arises when this realization hits. Not loud. Not mocking. A quiet, internal exhale that feels like stepping out of a nightmare you didn't know you were dreaming. You see how much of your life was shaped by shadows that never had the power to touch you. You see how many decisions were guided by threats that never existed. Fear dissolves not through force, but through clarity. The moment you look directly at it, the illusion collapses, and in that collapse, you reclaim the power that was always yours, the power to walk without being haunted by ghosts of your own creation. Picture a man moving through the world like a calm storm, silent, collected, unshaken. His presence does not demand attention, yet it shifts the air around him. He does not announce his strength. He does not broadcast his intentions. He walks as though every step is chosen, every breath grounded, every moment fully inhabited. This is the man who has destroyed fear without making a sound. Musashi lived by a simple ethos. The way is in training, and the way is in silence. Strength is not forged through noise. Noise only distracts the weak from their own fragility. Real strength grows in the quiet discipline of meeting yourself honestly, again and again, until fear no longer finds a foothold in your spirit. A man who knows himself deeply becomes unmoved by the storms that terrify others. Modern men often mistake noise for confidence. They speak loudly, act impulsively, chase attention, and overcompensate for wounds they refuse to face. Their movements reveal their insecurity. Their reactions expose their fear. But the man who has done the internal work, the man who faced the trembling and stillness, confronted the shadow behind him, trained in silence, and walked the path of the empty-handed, carries a different energy entirely. He does not seek approval because he already trusts his own judgment. He does not fear judgment because he no longer trembles before his own reflection. He walks through the night with a torch that burns from within, needing no witness, no applause, no validation. His silence is not emptiness, it is mastery. This is the state you are moving toward, not fearlessness, because fear may still whisper, but reactionlessness. Equanimity, a still center that cannot be shaken by shadows or illusions. You walk now as a warrior who does not tremble, not because danger has disappeared, but because you have. And in this quiet strength, you discover the final truth. Fear cannot touch a man who carries his own light into the darkness and does not need the world to see it.